There is a wound that almost every human being carries, though we rarely speak its name. It is the fear of being cast aside, the fear of rejection. We dread the moment someone might look at us and say, "You are not enough," or worse, not say anything at all and simply turn their back. This fear runs so deep that many of us shape our lives not around who we truly are, but around what we think others want us to be. But the truth is this: the only way to live freely, the only way to feel whole, is to release the hunger for external approval and to learn the sacred art of valuing oneself. This journey is not easy, but it is transformative. Tonight, let us walk together through 5 steps that can free us from the fear of rejection and awaken the power of self-worth. There is a peculiar cruelty in how the human heart interprets rejection. The moment we are turned away, a voice deep inside whispers, "You are not enough." That voice, however, does not belong to truth, it belongs to fear. Rejection, in its essence, is not a declaration of your unworthiness, but a mirror that reflects the inner world of another. It is their preferences, their limitations, their unseen battles, projected outward. Yet, because we are vulnerable creatures longing to belong, we confuse the reflection with a verdict, and we let the shadows of someone else's perception stain the light of our own soul. Consider the scene of a job interview. A candidate filled with hope steps into the room carrying not only their resume but also their quiet dreams of possibility. They answer the questions, they do their best, and yet days later the polite message arrives: "We have chosen someone else." The person who receives this news often feels the sting of shame, as though the rejection has pierced their very identity. But what truly happened? Perhaps the company had already decided to hire an internal candidate. Perhaps they were looking for a different temperament, a style of leadership, or simply a personality that aligned better with the existing team. None of these factors erase the qualifications, talents, or humanity of the rejected individual. The decision was not a verdict upon their essence. It was merely a mirror reflecting the needs and inclinations of others at that time. In matters of the heart, this truth is even more profound. Many people carry lifelong wounds because someone they loved could not return their affection. A man may recall the moment a woman told him, "I just don't feel the same," or a woman may remember the partner who walked away without explanation. In such moments, the rejection feels like a thunderclap against the soul, as though it confirms the deepest fear: "I am unlovable." Yet often, the truth is that the other person was not ready, or was seeking something else, or was held back by wounds of their own. A heart that cannot open does not prove that you are unworthy of love. It merely proves that the other person is not in a place to receive the love you carry. If someone cannot see your light, it does not mean you are in darkness. It means they are wearing blinders of their own making. The danger lies in mistaking another's blindness for your own deficiency. When a child grows up with parents who cannot express affection, that child often concludes, "I must not deserve love." When a young adult faces rejection in friendships or romance, they may come to believe, "Something is wrong with me." These beliefs can calcify into lifelong patterns of self-doubt, but let us ask, does the inability of another to love or recognize you actually diminish your worth? Does the sun become less radiant because a cloud passes in front of it? The answer, of course, is no. Yet we live as though the cloud has stolen the light. To see rejection as a mirror rather than a verdict requires a shift in perspective. Life is full of feedback, and every no is part of that feedback system. It is like a compass nudging you away from the wrong path and toward the right one. The friend who drifts away may be making room for companions who will cherish you more deeply. The lover who turns away may be clearing the space for someone who will meet your soul with open eyes. The job that slips through your fingers may be pointing you to the place where your talents will flourish. Each rejection is less a closed door than a signpost, guiding you to where you are meant to stand. A woman once told me a story of her university days. She applied to a prestigious program and was rejected. For months she carried the bitterness like a stone in her chest. Yet because she was denied that opportunity, she chose another path, studying in a smaller institution where she met her lifelong mentor and discovered a field of work that ignited her passion. Years later, she admitted that the rejection was one of the greatest blessings of her life, though at the time it felt like a wound. This is the paradox of rejection. What appears as loss often conceals a hidden gift. The psyche, however, resists this lesson. It craves certainty and approval, and so it clings to the idea that rejection means failure. But growth begins the moment we no longer collapse under the weight of another's no. To recognize rejection as a mirror is to take back your power. It is to declare, this event reflects their world, not my essence. I remain whole regardless of how they respond to me. In this way, rejection loses its venom. It becomes information, not condemnation. Think of an artist who shares their painting with the world. One person may say it is beautiful, another may shrug, a third may criticize. Which reaction tells the truth about the painting? None. Each response is a mirror of the observer's tastes, experiences, and state of mind. The painting remains what it is, unaltered in its essence. You, too, are like that painting. Reactions to you will vary, but your essence is not diminished or magnified by them. When we stop interpreting rejection as a verdict, we step into freedom. We stop contorting ourselves into shapes designed to please others. We stop silencing our voice out of fear that it will not be heard. Instead, we begin to live authentically, trusting that the right people and opportunities will recognize us, and those who cannot are simply not meant to walk with us. The most liberating realization is this: rejection does not diminish you, it redirects you. It is the psyche's way of pruning away what does not belong, making space for what does. Every rejection is an invitation to remember who you are apart from others' judgments. It whispers, you are still whole, you are still worthy, you are still light. And so, the next time rejection visits you, do not treat it as an executioner's blow. Look into the mirror it offers. See clearly that it reflects not your inadequacy, but the conditions, desires, or blindness of another. Accept the feedback it gives, but do not allow it to define your essence. For your essence was never on trial. Since childhood we have been taught, almost unconsciously, to hold out our hands like beggars, waiting for someone else to drop a coin of approval into our palms. We entered classrooms and learned quickly that a gold star on a chart, or the red ink of an A+ across the top of a page, was not simply recognition of performance, but a symbol of who we were allowed to be in the eyes of others. At home, a parent's smile or frown could lift us into the clouds or sink us into despair, teaching us that love itself seemed conditional. On the playground, the approval of peers became currency. To be chosen, to be admired, to be liked was to feel momentarily safe. But in all of these lessons, subtle though they were, we inherited a fragile truth, that our sense of value could be outsourced, delegated to the shifting opinions of the world. The danger in this bargain is immense, for what is given from the outside can be snatched away at any moment. Today you may be celebrated, tomorrow you may be forgotten, and if your worth rises and falls with the applause of others, you will spend your entire life in a restless chase, always running after validation, always terrified of its absence. This is why so many people feel empty even when they achieve what they thought would complete them. They gain the promotion, they win the admiration, they collect the compliments, and yet a gnawing hunger remains. The hunger comes because no amount of external approval can ever fill the vast interior well of the soul. That well can only be filled from within. Consider the story of J.K. Rowling. Before the wizarding world of Harry Potter transformed her into a cultural phenomenon, she faced the cold sting of rejection, not once but multiple times. Publisher after publisher dismissed her manuscript. Imagine if she had measured her worth by their letters. Imagine if she had said to herself, "If they cannot see value in me, then there must be none." The story we know, the millions of lives touched, the children who discovered a love for reading because of her imagination, would never have existed. What saved her was not the world's approval, but an inner conviction, quiet, steady, and unyielding, that the story she carried was worth telling. The world eventually confirmed her value, but the seed was already planted in her own belief. She did not outsource her worth, she cultivated it. Many of us, however, do not yet realize how deeply we have tied ourselves to the opinions of others. Think about how a single negative comment can undo hours of effort. Think about how the silence of someone we love can make us question our entire being. Social media amplifies this dependency even further. A photograph or idea is shared, and in minutes we await the verdict in the form of likes, comments, or shares. If the numbers are high, we feel momentarily validated. If they are low, we slip into doubt. This cycle is endless, and it is exhausting. It is as if we have placed the keys to our self-worth in every passerby's hand, hoping they will grant us entry into the house of our own value. But the truth is simpler, though far more difficult to accept. No one outside of you can ever bestow lasting worth. Worth is not earned, it is inherent. You were born with it. To believe otherwise is to live as though your existence is perpetually on trial, and the jury is made up of strangers who know nothing of the depths of your soul. When you recognize this, you begin to ask a different kind of question, one that carries power. What do I think of me? This question cuts through the noise of the world, silences the restless need for applause, and directs your attention inward, where the only true authority resides. There is immense courage in living this way. Imagine an artist who paints not for galleries or critics, but because something within them longs to be expressed. Their work may never hang in a museum, yet if they honor their vision with integrity, they are already fulfilled. Imagine a man who chooses kindness not because it will earn him praise, but because it aligns with his inner values. He may not always be recognized, but his self-respect becomes unshakable. Or consider a young woman who dares to follow a career path that her family disapproves of, yet feels true to her nature. Though she risks disapproval, she gains something far greater, a life aligned with her own authenticity. When you stop outsourcing your value, the opinions of others do not vanish, but they lose their power to define you. Approval becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Disapproval becomes uncomfortable but not fatal. You begin to see both for what they truly are, reflections of other people's perspectives, not measurements of your soul. Just as you do not lose your identity because someone mispronounces your name, you do not lose your worth because someone fails to recognize it. This does not mean we close ourselves to feedback or relationships. To live in society is to be influenced and shaped by others, but influence is different from authority. Influence is something you consider, authority is something you grant. The tragedy of many lives is that people hand over authority to the shifting winds of public opinion. To reclaim it is to anchor yourself in the only place it was ever meant to reside, within. We can all practice this reclamation in small, daily ways. The next time you complete a task, resist the urge to immediately seek another's validation. Pause and ask yourself, am I proud of how I showed up? Did I act with integrity? Did I honor my effort? These are the questions that rebuild the foundation of inner worth. When you make a decision, instead of asking, will they approve? Begin by asking, does this feel aligned with who I am? When you fall short, instead of spiraling into shame, practice speaking to yourself with the same compassion you would extend to a friend. Over time, these small acts of self-recognition accumulate into a deep reservoir of self-trust, and from that trust, real confidence arises. The irony is that when you stop chasing approval, you often become more magnetic to others. People are drawn to those who stand rooted in their own worth, because such individuals carry a presence that cannot be faked. It is the quiet strength of someone who does not need to prove themselves, the calm of someone who is no longer bargaining for acceptance. In truth, the world respects most deeply those who do not depend on its approval, and so the great task before each of us is to call back what we have given away. To gather the fragments of our worth from the hands of teachers, parents, lovers, colleagues, strangers, and critics, and to bring them home, to plant them once again in the soil of our own soul, where no rejection or silence or disapproval can uproot them. For when your worth is rooted within, you become unshakable. You may bend with the winds of life, but you will not break. And in that unshakable place, you find the freedom that was always waiting, the freedom to live not as a performer seeking applause, but as a soul expressing its truth. Rejection often arrives like a storm, sudden, cold, and disorienting. In its wake, we feel stripped bare, as though singled out by fate itself. The pain is sharp not only because of the loss, but because we believe in that moment that this wound belongs to us alone. We whisper to ourselves, why me? What is wrong with me? As though we were cursed, marked by some hidden flaw that no one else carries. Yet the truth is that rejection is not a solitary burden, but a thread woven into the very fabric of human existence. It is not the exception but the rule. Every soul, no matter how luminous, has known the sting of being turned away. To realize this is to soften the blow, for it reveals rejection not as evidence of our unworthiness, but as evidence of our humanity. Look closely at those whom society crowns as extraordinary, the legends whose names echo through history, and you will find stories of rejection written into their journeys. Michael Jordan, who would later be hailed as perhaps the greatest basketball player to ever live, was once cut from his high school basketball team. At that tender age, when identity itself feels fragile, he was told in effect, "You are not good enough." Yet rather than allowing this rejection to calcify into shame, he used it as fuel, transforming the sting of being overlooked into the fire of relentless practice. What seemed like a closed door became the opening through which greatness was forged. Consider also Oprah Winfrey, one of the most influential figures in modern media. Early in her career, she was told she wasn't fit for television, that she lacked the qualities needed to succeed in broadcasting. Imagine if she had believed that verdict. Imagine if she had concluded, "They are right, I have no place here." The millions who have been touched by her authenticity, her empathy, her power to give voice to the voiceless, might never have known her. The rejection did not define her, it refined her. Even in the realm of science, where we imagine pure reason holds sway, rejection still makes its mark. Albert Einstein, the mind whose theories would revolutionize physics, faced academic rejection in his early years. He struggled to find teaching positions, and many doubted his potential. Had he equated rejection with failure, his genius might have remained buried. But rejection is blind. It does not distinguish between the ordinary and the extraordinary. It visits everyone. When we recognize this universality, something shifts inside us. The sting of rejection, though still painful, no longer feels like a cosmic judgment. It becomes less about "I am unworthy" and more about "I am walking a path that every human before me has walked." In this way, rejection connects us rather than isolates us. It places us within the great human story, alongside saints and poets, athletes and scholars, lovers and wanderers, all of whom have felt the same ache of being turned away. Think for a moment about a broken heart. The experience of unrequited love or the ending of a relationship can feel utterly personal, as though the universe itself has singled you out for suffering. Yet across every culture, across every generation, songs, poems, and stories testify to this very same pain. The young woman who weeps in her bedroom because someone she loves cannot love her back is joined invisibly by countless others across time who have shed the same tears. There is a strange comfort in knowing this, that the pain we feel has been felt by kings and beggars alike, and that it binds us to the vast tapestry of human experience. When you embrace rejection as universal, it loses its power to isolate. You no longer imagine yourself as uniquely flawed or singled out by fate. Instead, you see it as part of the curriculum of life, a class from which no one is exempt. Some lessons in this curriculum come through joy, others through sorrow, and rejection is one of the great teachers. It strips away illusions, confronts us with ourselves, and forces us to build resilience. And though we may resist it, we are shaped by it. The one who has never been rejected has never truly risked themselves in the world. In fact, rejection is often the shadow side of aspiration. To strive for anything meaningful, to create, to love, to lead, to grow, carries with it the possibility of being turned away. The artist who never shares their work avoids rejection, but they also avoid the possibility of touching another soul. The lover who never confesses their feelings avoids heartbreak, but they also avoid intimacy. The entrepreneur who never launches an idea avoids failure, but they also avoid innovation. Rejection is the inevitable companion of courage. To avoid it is to live a life so small that it fits entirely within the boundaries of what is already known and safe. And yet, when we begin to see rejection as universal, its sting becomes easier to bear. It is like falling in the rain and realizing that everyone else is soaked too. You may still be wet and uncomfortable, but you are no longer alone in your condition. In fact, you may even smile at the thought that this storm is part of what it means to be alive. There is also another gift hidden in rejection. It reveals to us the depth of our desire. If rejection did not hurt, it would mean we did not truly care. The pain of being turned away is evidence that we reached for something beyond ourselves, that we stretched toward growth, love, or expression. To be rejected is to be reminded of our capacity to long for more, and longing itself is a sign of life. So the next time rejection comes knocking, pause before you fall into the familiar spiral of shame. Instead, breathe and remember, you are not alone in this. You walk in the company of millions who have felt the same ache and risen beyond it. Think of the basketball legend who once sat on the sidelines, the media icon who was once deemed unfit, the scientist who once faced dismissal. Think of the countless unnamed souls who have endured heartbreak, lost opportunities and closed doors, and who still carried on. Rejection is not your personal curse. It is humanity's common trial, and in that realization the wound begins to heal. For you see that rejection, though painful, is not the end. It is part of the rhythm of life, a rhythm that binds you to the whole of humanity. When you accept this truth, rejection ceases to feel like exile and instead becomes a strange form of belonging. It is the mark not of your unworthiness, but of your participation in the vast shared journey of what it means to be human. Success is a word heavy with illusions. From the moment we are old enough to compare ourselves with others, we are taught a particular script of what it means to succeed. It often begins with numbers, grades in school, trophies in competitions, the size of the house one grows up in. Later, it shifts to career titles, salaries, appearances, possessions, and social status. Society paints success as a glittering image on a distant hill, a promise that if we climb hard enough, if we sacrifice enough, if we prove ourselves enough, we will finally arrive at the place where rejection cannot reach us. But what most discover, sometimes after decades of climbing, is that the ladder they were given leads to a wall that does not belong to them, and the higher they go, the emptier it feels. The fear of rejection thrives in this illusion. If your definition of success comes entirely from outside of you, then every disapproving glance, every closed door, every dismissal from the world threatens to strip away your sense of worth. You live like an actor on a stage, desperate for applause, because applause is the measure of whether you are winning. Yet the applause of the world is fickle. It shifts with trends, with moods, with circumstances beyond your control. To live by it is to condemn yourself to perpetual insecurity. This is why the true work is not to chase someone else's definition of success, but to redefine it for yourself. Success must be personal. It must come from the deepest layers of your being, from the quiet places where your authentic desires speak. For some, success may be the creation of art that carries their soul into color and form, even if only a handful of people ever see it. For others, success may be the building of a family, a community, or a life of service that leaves no headlines but plants seeds of love and integrity in the world. For another, success may be found in simplicity, a garden, a faithful relationship, a spiritual life rich with meaning. There is no universal formula, for each soul carries its own calling. The tragedy is that many never ask themselves what success means to them. They accept the template handed to them by family, culture, or society, and pursue it diligently, only to discover at the summit a hollow victory. It is like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. You may acquire wealth, but if wealth was never your true measure of fulfillment, it leaves you parched. You may gain popularity, but if the crowd's approval was never your heart's desire, you will feel lonelier than ever in the spotlight. True success cannot be borrowed. It must be created from within. Vincent van Gogh is one of the clearest examples of this paradox. By the world's standards, he was a failure. He sold only one painting during his lifetime, lived in poverty, and struggled with immense personal turmoil. Yet, if we measure his life by the integrity of his calling, he was wildly successful. He painted not for applause, but because his soul demanded expression through color and brushstroke. The world could not see his worth while he lived, but he continued none the less, driven by an inner compass stronger than rejection. Today, millions stand in front of his paintings in awe, receiving light from a man who died thinking he had failed. This is the power of defining success in your own terms. It frees you from the tyranny of the moment and allows you to live authentically. There are countless quieter stories that carry the same truth. A teacher who devotes her life to shaping young minds may never be famous, but the lives she touches ripple across generations. A father who chooses to be present, who sacrifices status to raise his children with love, may not receive applause from society, but he creates success of immeasurable worth. A healer who serves the poor without recognition may leave this world without wealth, yet his spirit will echo in the countless lives uplifted by his compassion. To the outside world, these lives may look small, but in the inner sense, they are vast. To redefine success is to rebel against the collective script and to write your own. It requires courage, for the world may not understand you. It may say, "You could have been more," or "Why don't you want what everyone else wants?" But the only tragedy greater than facing society's misunderstanding is to live a life untrue to yourself. Better to walk your own path in solitude than to walk another's path in crowds. One way to begin this redefinition is to ask yourself what fulfillment feels like in your body and soul. When do you feel most alive? What activities or ways of living leave you with a sense of wholeness, regardless of recognition? It may be when you are creating, when you are nurturing, when you are teaching, when you are discovering. These are clues to your personal definition of success. The more you honor them, the less rejection from others can disturb you, for you no longer seek their permission to live your truth. Imagine someone climbing a mountain. If they climb it because the world told them that reaching the summit is success, they may arrive exhausted, only to find that the view does not nourish them. But if they climb the mountain because something inside them longs for the journey, then every step, every struggle, every view along the way is already success. The difference lies not in the mountain itself, but in the meaning they assign to it. Rejection loses much of its sting when success is redefined. If your worth is tied to society's ladder, then being turned away feels like devastation. But if your worth is tied to your own inner compass, then rejection is only a redirection. You no longer fear the world's no, because your yes to yourself is louder. Success is not measured by applause, but by alignment. It is not measured by how high you climb, but by whether the ladder you climb leans against the wall of your own soul. When you live this way, your life becomes a quiet act of liberation. You show others that it is possible to step outside the prison of borrowed definitions. You become proof that success is not one thing but many things, each person carrying their own definition. And in living authentically, you offer permission for others to do the same. So the work before us is not to climb faster, achieve more, or impress louder, but to pause and ask, whose ladder am I climbing? Does it belong to me? If the answer is no, then have the courage to step down and find your own. It may not shine as brightly in the world's eyes, but it will shine with a deeper, steadier light within you. For true success is not the conquest of the world's applause, but the fulfillment of one's own soul. The deepest antidote to the fear of rejection lies not in persuading the world to accept you, nor in endlessly trying to mold yourself into a shape that others will applaud, but in building an inner authority so steady that no storm can shake it. This authority does not announce itself loudly. It does not demand attention or insist upon dominance. Instead, it emerges quietly, almost invisibly, through the daily practice of self-respect. And though it may seem subtle, it is the very foundation upon which a life of wholeness and freedom is built. Self-respect is often misunderstood. Many think it arrives as a result of external achievement, titles, wealth, beauty, or recognition. But these things are fragile. They can be given and taken away. True self-respect is something more enduring, and it is cultivated not in grandiose gestures, but in the small, faithful acts of keeping faith with oneself. Each time you honor your own word, even when no one else is watching, you are laying down a stone in the foundation of your inner authority. Imagine a person who constantly breaks promises to themselves. They say they will rise early to work on a dream, but they do not. They say they will stop tolerating mistreatment, yet they allow it again and again. They say they will speak the truth, but they hide behind silence. Over time, such a person begins to live with an invisible erosion, a subtle message repeated in their psyche. You cannot trust yourself, and when you cannot trust yourself, the opinions of others grow loud, overwhelming, irresistible. You lean on them because your own ground feels shaky, but imagine instead the person who decides, no matter how small the commitment, to honor it. They say, I will write a single page today, and they do. They say, I will not let that person cross this boundary again, and they hold the line. They say, I will speak what I believe, even if it trembles in my throat, and they speak. Slowly, they begin to carry a quiet strength, for the message within them has shifted. I can rely on me. That trust becomes unshakable armor. There is profound dignity in being able to stand with yourself. When you build self-respect through daily choices, the approval or disapproval of others loses its power to define you. Their voices may still be heard, but they do not echo so loudly within you, for deep inside you carry a stronger voice, your own, that says, I know who I am, and I know what I stand for. The paradox is that when you no longer live in desperate need of external validation, you often begin to draw more genuine respect from others. People are drawn to those who radiate self-trust, because such individuals embody something rare and magnetic, a presence that is not for sale. Think of the calm presence of someone who has cultivated this inner authority. They walk into a room without arrogance, yet without apology. They do not demand attention, but their very steadiness attracts it. They can listen without defensiveness, speak without aggression, and stand firm without rigidity. This is not because they are untouched by fear or doubt, but because they have built a relationship with themselves so strong that they do not abandon it when challenged. They are not perfect, they are consistent, and consistency with oneself is the deepest form of self-respect. This daily practice of self-respect can take many forms, but it always requires honesty. It asks you to face the places where you betray yourself and to begin, slowly, to repair the trust. If you constantly agree to things you do not want, learn to say no. If you silence yourself to please others, begin to let your voice be heard, even in small ways. If you neglect your body or your mind, begin to care for them as though they are worthy of devotion, because they are. Self-respect is not about perfection or control. It is about showing yourself, through action, that you are worthy of your own loyalty. Real strength is born from this loyalty. It is not the strength of aggression or domination, but the strength of endurance, clarity, and calm. When you respect yourself, rejection no longer feels like annihilation. You may still feel pain when others turn away, but you do not collapse, because you know you are not abandoned. You are still standing with yourself. And in this stance, you find a freedom so profound it cannot be purchased. For what greater strength is there than to be at home within your own being? One of the greatest tragedies is to spend a lifetime seeking others' approval while neglecting to build this inner foundation. For then, when the crowd turns away, the person finds themselves hollow, unable to stand. But the one who has built inner authority discovers that even in solitude, even in rejection, they remain intact. They may grieve the loss, but they do not lose themselves. They may stumble, but they rise again on ground that is solid. This is why daily self-respect matters more than grand moments of triumph. It is the quiet discipline of choosing yourself again and again, in ways that may seem insignificant, but accumulate into a fortress not built of stone and steel, but of integrity and trust. And in this fortress, fear begins to fade. The fear of rejection, once so powerful, dissolves in the presence of a deeper truth, that no one else's approval can ever substitute for the respect you give to yourself. So the invitation is simple but profound. Begin today. Do not wait for some dramatic transformation or a perfect moment of clarity. Begin with one small promise and keep it. Begin with one boundary and honor it. Begin with one truth and speak it. Each act will reinforce the message that you are someone worth standing with. And as that message takes root, you will feel the shift. You will feel the ground beneath you grow firm. You will feel the noise of others' judgments grow quieter. You will feel the presence of a companion who will never leave you, your own self, standing tall at your side. And when you live from this place, you will carry a calm strength into the world. Even if the world turns away, you will not. Even if rejection comes, you will remain whole. And in that wholeness lies the greatest freedom of all. The freedom to live without fear, because you know without doubt that you are your own authority, and you will never abandon yourself. So, my friends, to eliminate the fear of rejection is not to eliminate rejection itself. Rejection will come again and again, but when you see it as a mirror, stop outsourcing your value, embrace its universality, redefine success, and cultivate daily self-respect. Rejection loses its power. You will no longer tremble at the thought of not being chosen, because you will have already chosen yourself. And in that choice lies freedom, the freedom to live, to love, and to create without chains. For the greatest approval you could ever seek is the approval of your own soul.